Hello and welcome back, and that's right, today I want to talk about the new Synology DS124, a one-bay NAS that is also one of the world's worst kept secrets in the world of NAS. What do I mean by that? Well, even though I'm making this video now, I and many users have kind of already known about this Synology mid-range value 1-bay for quite a long time. Indeed, when Synology rolled out DSM 7.2 in beta in the download section, the drop-down, we found information and remnants of a DS123 later into a DS124. Fast forward, we also found further information in Synology's own knowledge section, and then when we did look through data sheets and information on later releases in the last few months, we found even more references to a DS124. So we've kind of known the DS124 was going to come, but we just didn't know when. And now Synology have already rolled out their value series 2-bay, the DS223, and rolled out their value series 4-bay, the DS423. It was inevitable that there was going to be another value 1-bay following up that DS118 from around 2017-18. Now, it's worth highlighting that if you already know pretty much everything about the 2 and the 4-bay, there's not going to be a lot of surprises in this video. There will be a couple of little curveballs later on, but these are very, very minor and software related. So take my word for it, if you've already looked up the 223 and the 423, you know pretty much everything I'm going to say. But for the rest of you, and the rest of you in the cheap seats, sit down and we'll go through it. So this 1-bay is Synology's value series. It runs with a single SATA drive inside. There's no hot swapping enabled there. It's a closed system, a closed casing, but at the same time, it's a 1-bay. There's no M2 NVMe or SSD support. So frankly, this shouldn't have hot swapping, because if you remove that drive, you completely smash DSM. So we're not going to give it too much heck for that not having hot swapping ability, because that would be pointless here. The CPU inside this device is that Realtek ARM that they've used in a few releases recently. The Realtek RTD1619B, which is a quad-core 1.7 64-bit ARM processor there. Now, we already know it's going to run DSM 7.2. Great. We've already tested this architecture in that 223 and the 423. We've also tested it on some lower range DSM 7.2 on some lower range devices, as low as the J series 1-bay, the DS120J. And DSM 7.2 and some of its features did run on that, and this will not be an exception to that. Why do I need to bring up this whole thing about exceptions? Well, notwithstanding the fact that it is an ARM-based processor that by its very nature is designed to be power efficient, in that when instructions are delivered to and from it, they are delivered using compression in order for the CPU to execute those commands with a greater deal of efficiency and lower power consumption. Generally, ARM processors are found in mobile devices, portable devices, tablets and stuff like that, and although are great for, being on for days, weeks, months, or even years at a time without any full power down, it does result in certain more complex applications that are, furthermore possible on an Intel or AMD x86 based architecture, your Celerons, your Pentiums, your Ryzens, that sort of thing. They're not going to be possible here. So, transcoding in things like Plex, off the table. More graphical enabled capabilities and more graphical larger scale handling and complex applications and services such as virtualization of VMs is not going to be possible, with one major exception. More on that in a moment. Overall, although you can run the range of full DSM 7.2 applications for the most part, things like volume encryption, you're not going to get. Things like write once, read many, you're not going to get here. Services like Active Backup Suite, you're not going to get here. You're going to get the rest of the collaboration suite, going as far as the likes of Synology Chat, Synology Drive, and indeed some of the AI-supported facial recognition services of Synology Photos, but nothing really more complex than that. You've got the standard camera licenses there with Surveillance Station, a couple of them in there, but you're not going to be able to support loads of cameras. Now, other than that CPU, where is the limitation coming from? Unsurprisingly, the memory. This system arrives with 1 gig of DDR4 memory fixed, soldered to the board, cannot be upgraded. Not unusual in an ARM-based system trying to keep things efficient, but that 1 gig of memory is what's significantly going to set it apart from a number of other devices. Now, why is that a big limiting factor? Well, 1 gig of memory, when you're already running Synology's DSM platform there, that's already going to take its bite of the available resources. But things like BTRFS, which Synology has proudly supported on a number of their devices, including the likes of the DS223 and 423, are not available here. The DS124 does not support BTRFS from what I can see. Now, perhaps this will change later down the line as Synology continues to keep things efficient, but we've already looked at the history of Synology when it comes to the DS118, 218, 418, the DS420, all of these systems that have arrived in the past with 1 gig, even if they've had those ARM-based processors they made the most of, never supported BTRFS. The ones with 2 gig eventually, and again that is your 218, your 418, they actually did eventually support BTRFS. That 2 gig limiting factor is the door of entry, which sadly is not available here. Now, with the NAS arriving hopefully around the 179, 189 mark in line with its contemporaries before it, that is going to be a very attractive price point there, particularly when you include maybe a larger scale drive. And again, if you're worried about noise, don't go above about 8 or 10 TB. But even then, if you go to a single 8 TB, factoring in your local NAS backup there over the network, rsync remote, factoring in a USB backup, this isn't going to be too shabby a NAS. It's still an entry-level NAS, and this hardware architecture is going to be great for local DLNA media server use there, and you can run Plex Media Server in a container. We did as much on the DS223 using 2 gig of memory on its default setup there. It didn't run out of this world, but it ran pretty darn well. So for this 1 bay, you're looking at an very entry-level Plex Media Server that we were able to get some 4K running on. You're looking at an ARM-based NAS there that can run containers, some low-level surveillance. Just be mindful of that 1 gig of memory, because that's going to be a tremendous limiting factor. Now, if we look at the ports and connections on the rear, there's not a great deal to write home about, but it's not a surprise given that's the way Synology have run this particular railroad of one bays for a while. There's a couple of USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports there, so 5 gig each, and Synology has continued its rampaging diminishing of USB utilities on a lot of their devices, so you've got storage utilities there, but things like network upgrades aren't really officially supported due to Synology really pushing the whole USB stripping for security purposes point of view, but you've still got UPSs that run on there, just not really office appliances and kind of network peripherals too. But if you're going to be utilizing a USB backup, which is significantly recommended for a device of this scale, even if you're only going to attach a standard USB backup, we're using Hyper Backup or USB copy to regularly back up your storage to USB, that might be attractive there. So at least you've got a couple of ports there. No one-touch copy button or anything like that on the front, but still nonetheless better than nothing. In terms of network connectivity, I'm not going to be too harsh about this. I'm going to be a little, but not loads. It's got 1 network port and it's 1 gigabit Ethernet there. Now, this is a 1 bay NAS, so there was always going to be an enormous limitation when it comes to external transmission and bandwidth on a device of this caliber. One drive, be it hard drive, you might cap out around 250, 260 with an end-level drive, or if you go for a SATA SSD, you might get somewhere, you know, within the OS, somewhere in excess of 400 to 450 megs on a very good day with the right block levels. So I'm not going to give it too much trouble for that 1 gig, but still nonetheless, 1 gig is still going to be a limiting factor for any storage media these days. Even you go for really bog standard domestic level, you know, drives on the market, the majority of these are going to crank out 160 to 200 megs as an entry point there. So having 1 gig on this is going to be limiting, but it is still part of Synology's value series. And although Synology haven't exactly been backwards in being forwards about their frank disdain for 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, they've never introduced anything like that, even close on a value series device, let alone dual network ports, although they did visit it on the 4 bay there. So not putting 2.5 GBE, not great. Not supporting 2.5 to USB adapters for future-proofing, not great. But I'm not as disappointed on a 1 bay system like this as I have been on some of the systems discussed on the past here on the channel. DSM 7.2, as mentioned, does run on this. Great, it's good, although it's going to be the more limited version with some of those premium level applications out the window. And that's really it. We didn't really expect the DS124 or the DS123 when it was first getting kind of mildly leaked online to be any kind of showstopper device, but as a 1 bay, it's not too shabby as an entry point into DSM and having your own private server with very user-friendly software to start with. Just keep in mind that a lot of the big AAA parts of Synology's DSM platform are just not going to be present here. You're not going to be able to take advantage of SHR. There's only 1 bay. You've got 2 camera licenses, but you can only support up to a handful of cameras. You've only got 1 GBE. You haven't got access to Virtual Machine Manager, but you do have access to Container Manager. You don't have access to Active Backup Suite, but you do have access to Hyper Backup. And although you do have access to things like Drive and Mail and Chat and all of those Office applications there, just bear in mind that 1 gig and that CPU is going to significantly diminish the full range of apps and services that it can run. And in terms of multimedia and photo backup, on a low level, this is good, and if you can use it as an option to back up your existing NAS on a very affordable way, that's also quite a good tick in the old maybe go for it box as well. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, then why not take advantage of the free advice in the free advice section over on NAS Compares. It's the big blue button on the right hand side of that screen. Or use the free community support forum over on Ask NAS Compares. You can use our Discord where you can chat to Eddie and myself very rarely, frankly, because I've got so much to do. But there are lots of people on there that can help you out. And finally, if you want to help us out to make more videos moving forward, then please, if you have found this video helpful and you are going to shop at websites like B&H, Newegg, Amazon, Scan, or a number of different retailers, use the links in the description to take you there. It will cost you nothing extra to use those links. You lose nothing by using them. But if you do, and it takes you to that store, anything you buy will result in a kickback coming to here at NAS Compares. It's literally just me and Eddie running this whole gig. And it really helps us to continue doing what we do. Use it as a way to support content creators like us, passively and without any extra work on your part. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Read the article in the description to learn more that will be updated closer to a full release. And I will see you next time.